It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. Hey, here's good news for Tuesday haters. It's over. And it's Wednesday. Gary, welcome to it. How are you?
Yeah, but officially this means that the presidential campaign has started.
Yeah, here we are.
Officially today, the first GOP debate. We'll get to that here in a little bit. I was just sitting here wondering, though, the New York Times story the other day talking about what was going on inside the Department of Justice. You had liberal media covering that, and because the New York Times did the story, nobody is screaming that it is a conservative hit job.
Right.
And if you look at it, that was extremely damaging to Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
And the Department of Justice, saying that they and to David Weiss, huge. They weren't going to prosecute at all. Think about how big that story is coming from the New York Times, which basically said David Weiss was just going to let him skip nothing. He wouldn't have to pay his back taxes. He wouldn't be charged with anything. They were just going to drop this thing.
Yeah, and this isn't this isn't like November of 2028, years after it happened, and the New York Times comes around to doing this story. This is early on. The special prosecutor was just assigned, and we're just beginning, really, if you think of today, I guess. I don't know, is it officially? But we're just beginning the 24 election season. The timing on this can't be denied.
And so you look at that and you say, whoa. And we had talked about what was in the actual story, but just started thinking yesterday just how incredible it is, because it's the New York Times who has run cover for this administration and this Justice Department over and over and over again. And because I believe that they are not journalists but political activists, you have to wonder why. Then there was the story yesterday about the Washington Post columnist who has changed his mind in calling for Joe Biden to be fully investigated over Hunter's business dealings. In his latest column, this is Washington Post columnist Henry Olson, wrote on Tuesday that he originally long dismissed stories regarding Hunter Biden, but recent revelations have changed his mind. By the way, I am sober. There's more than enough evidence to merit a thorough investigation of President Biden's involvement in his son's business dealings, Olson argued. Well, welcome. You finally arrived in the fourth quarter.
It really felt like it. I think you and I talked about it the other day with the New York Post story, or the New York Times story, which the New York Post also carried. It was like, hey, look, we want to say welcome to the liberal media for jumping in on a story well over 2 years later.
Why? Have they had enough of Biden?
I think a number of things. I think they're looking at the liability. Yesterday, the big explosion. Did he fall asleep on the social media explosion? Did he fall asleep during the ceremony in Hawaii? And if you look at the C-SPAN video, he's not asleep, but there's something actually I think that's more telling about him. He looks kind of zoned out. He doesn't know what to do with his hands in that moment. He's looking around. Other people are crying. He's not crying, so he looks down in an effort clearly to, I guess, look emotional. And then he looks up, and when he looks up, he looks lost. I think they're looking at this saying, he's a liability across the board, and if he wins, it's going to be horrific. And I think they're also looking at something else. It's a long time to November of 2024. This is only going to get worse. He's telling lies all the time. You ask him about the Hawaii fires, no comment? Then when he finally plans a trip, can you tell us about your trip? No. I think they're looking at him for the liability that he's always been and finally saying, we've got to make the change now, because if we're going to swap the governor of California out with Biden, that's going to have to happen now. So whatever recovery the party has to go through in order to get Newsom on the ground so he can start campaigning needs to happen as soon as possible.
I think it is about the election. I think the his cognitive abilities or his pathological line is all a part of it. I think that the fact that you have, because when you look at it, you had the New York Times in a clear story that isn't being argued that this isn't true. That everything that the whistleblowers have done, and we mentioned yesterday about, Jamie Raskin, this just blows it out of, it shows it shows he clearly lied, that the whistleblowers were clearly right, because you have the New York Times now and all conservative media agreeing that the Department of Justice, in essence, is corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And that they would let Hunter Biden slide completely to the point of not even forcing him to pay his back taxes. Forget about, the criminal charges.
Yeah.
They allowed him, Weiss was going to allow him to skate on not even paying his taxes.
Right.
They didn't even say, look, we're not
Nobody gets that deal,
right,
ever.
Nobody gets that deal. And it was funny because some liberal prosecutor saying, oh, Hunter Biden's been treated horrible. No regular person would be treated like that. Are you kidding me? And this is a guy who's a former federal prosecutor lying through his teeth. And I'll have the audio coming up here in a little bit. It just popped into my head.
Well,
now.
look, I mean, the liberal media, if it weren't for the whistleblowers, they wouldn't have acted.
No.
They would have done nothing without the whistleblowers' actions. That's the liberal media. So if you've been on the side of, oh, poor Hunter, or oh, poor Joe, he's just a loving father, you need to pull your head out, quite frankly, and look at what everybody now acknowledges. This is a total injustice, and we're not even starting yet on the actual investigation. We're talking about the handling of the investigation.
Because what this tells you, because the New York Times, they say, well, this is about Hunter. It might not, and I don't know if they've said that in the story, but this isn't about Joe. It's only about Hunter. No, it's about Joe's. It's about Joe's Justice Department not doing their job and trying to cover up crimes. And the New York Times is eventually going to have to say, well, the reason they did this is they knew where it was going to lead with Joe.
Yeah.
So they had to do this. But I think the New York Times is doing it, number one, because they don't want Biden to run. And they realize, as you said, that this is the time to do it. The other thing is they want to cover for themselves. Hey, we broke the big story of the corruption. And so the public that lives in the bubble of today will forget about how they covered for this president for the last couple of years.
That's a great point, because we've been asking, how do you just wake up and start covering it like you haven't been covering it?
Yes.
Now, critical thinkers will pick it apart for what it is, and you just hit on it. You find something that nobody else had found yet. And that was the whole thing with Weiss, that they weren't going to approach it. They weren't going to do anything on it until the whistleblowers, which, by the way, is a really good get for them.
Yeah, it is.
I'll take it. Of all the liberal media moves in recent years, that was a good one. That was one of the top in terms of actually doing at least some homework. Now, they're still not fully on board, but that was a big story, and that was a good, I don't know, do they use the word scoop anymore for those under the age of 90? Scoop was when you had a story that nobody else had?
Well, if the Department of Justice is corrupt with Hunter Biden, according to the New York Times, then the next logical thing people would say is, well, if they're corrupt there, are they corrupt going after Trump?
Right.
Are they corrupt going after Republicans? Are
Right.
they corrupt
Right.
going after Catholics?
Right.
Are they corrupt going after parents?
Right.
If you're going to be that blatantly corrupt, and that's the thing that you and I talked about, is the fact that you look at the Department of Justice and Merrick Garland, when he gets out there and gives his, whether it was David Weiss is going to be the special counsel or whatever he does, it's almost blatant, as I've said. Please excuse my language here, but I think you need to say it this way. Screw you, America. We're corrupt.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's been so blunt. And the New York Times, in their story, made it clear that absolutely the Department of Justice is corrupt. Now, they may look at it and go, well, David Weiss. All of it needed the approval. And as we know, David Weiss didn't get to do it. Everything was being handled from above.
Yeah.
As we all know.
Yeah.
And then Merrick Garland appointing him as special counsel was basically, taking your hand, lifting that finger up in the air to the American public and saying, to hell with you, we're corrupt. We're going to be so blatant and so blunt in our corruption where even the New York Times eventually a couple of weeks from now won't be able to ignore it.
Right. Yeah. That's it, and that's it. And maybe, that had to have been, I think you hit it dead on. That had to have been the play. If we're going to cover this story, we better find something that nobody else has so far. Nobody else had that. And it was a big deal because it tells you it's not surprising to all of us who have been paying attention, who haven't ignored it.
Not at all.
But it certainly is an acknowledgement from the left media to say this whole thing stinks. They weren't even going to do anything about it until the whistleblowers came. And
Yep.
When you look at
But then here's the point. It gives credibility to the IRS whistleblowers. Well, then the next thing is, the FBI whistleblowers and all the other whistleblowers that testified before Congress about what the Department of Justice is doing. If Merrick Garland and Weiss were involved in wanting to let Hunter Biden completely skate so it wouldn't lead to Joe, well, then everything else that the other FBI whistleblowers are coming forward with saying, I couldn't sit in a school parking lot taking license plate numbers of parents who are upset about critical race theory being taught in the school and the radical transgender movement. That's not the job of the FBI. It's the beginning of giving credibility
to the
from the
whistleblowers.
left
Yes.
to the FBI whistleblowers.
Yes. No, that's another great point because they typically would go in for the hit job. I know some people on a couple of Democrats tried to tear it down or tear down the process or whatever. What was it? Who was it that called it hearsay? In a couple of months ago, called the whole whistleblower thing. Well, that's just hearsay. No, you're not in a courtroom yet, man. That's not the way it works. Here's that's the landscape of where we are.
And think about it. The New York Times story was a direct broadside attack against Jamie Raskin and Dan Goldman.
Yep.
Think about this. The New York Times article made fools out of them and clearly showed to the American public that they're lying, that they lied about the whistleblowers.
Man, I'd love to see what kind of emails and responses they've gotten from their subscribers at the New York Times on that. I'm sure there was some hate mail, but I wonder how many people had their eyes open to this whole thing because they had closed their eyes and put their blinders on and chose not to look at it and followed the same talking points that everybody else had, and that was he's just a loving father and Hunter's just a crack addict. This is it is a bright point when the liberal media, who has been part of the culture wars in America in recent years, They've been a massive part of it. The whole Russian hoax thing on against Trump. They carried all of the water, all of it. If it weren't for them, they didn't even, Adam Schiff couldn't even keep that thing alive without the liberal media carrying the water on it. And for them to do this story on Hunter.
Yeah.
And not go after the whistleblowers, but instead actually give them credibility.
Yep.
Is a big deal.
Because that's an attack at the Democrat leadership.
Oh, yeah.
And
the DOJ.
That was trying to, well, yeah. I mean, the DOJ, of course, but I think in addition to it, because when you actually think about it, because all of a sudden Raskin and Goldman have been quiet the last few days.
They haven't said a thing.
Nope. Now, they'll be back again.
Sure.
They'll still be back again because they're political activists, so they don't care if they're embarrassed or get burned, even by the liberal media, for being liars.
Right.
They'll be back. They don't care because that's what they do. They're political activists.
Yep.
We got a great show ahead, 866-90 Red Eye.
How much do you know about synthetic oil? Heavy-duty trucks have been running on traditional mineral oil for the last 100 years, but today's technology brings us other options to consider. Synthetic is better quality. Unlike conventional oil, synthetic oils have a consistent molecular structure, giving it the ability to support pressures from higher horsepower engines, especially at lower RPMs. It also allows oil to reduce friction in an engine, controlling temperatures and improving fuel economy. Lastly, they're cleaner. Synthetics pick up fewer contaminants as they do their job of lubrication. They also have a better oxidation stability, resulting in an overall cleaner engine.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella.
Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, we did find out that where the Inspector General has been, at least yesterday. On the entire thing, when the Republicans writing him back after he wrote them a letter basically saying, I can't do anything because it's an ongoing investigation. You and I had talked about that before, that because it's they can make the excuse that it's always an ongoing investigation.
Right.
And therefore, we can't tell you anything. And we'll get to that coming up here, what the Republicans wrote back to him. Stating we're not asking you about the investigation. We're asking you basically about the people conducting the investigation.
Right.
That's what you need to be looking at.
Right.
It's not about, and it's like he's trying to make the case, well, I can't get involved in it because the investigation is going on. Well, then the Inspector General is useless in that case. If you're talking about all they have to do is say, sorry, we're doing an investigation on something that they clearly, as we now know from the left and the right, because the New York Times agrees exactly with the conservative media that the Department of Justice wanted to allow Hunter Biden to skate free without anything until the whistleblowers came along.
Right.
And then it was like, okay, we've got to charge him with something, misdemeanors here. And then that got blown out of the water by the judge like that. Think about how quick that was. Think about the run-up to that, Eric, and well, it's probably going to go right through, and it'll be no problem. It'll be rubber stamped, and it was like that thing really didn't get 5 minutes into it, and the whole thing was blew up. The whole deal blew up like that.
Yeah, just totally imploded.
And the IG saying, "Well, I can't investigate that because they're continuing the investigation because they got caught not doing the investigation."
Right.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I love this story here. Just the blue state Democrats propose handing out unemployment benefits to workers on strike. A group of California Democrats are expected to propose handing out unemployment benefits to striking workers, language expected to be released in the coming days or weeks to provide striking workers with benefits from California's unemployment insurance program that is $18 billion in debt. The move comes amid historic strikes. Think about this. Hollywood goes on strike, and now Democrats wish to bail out Hollywood.
Yeah.
It would allow individuals on strike who are not looking for work and were not let go through no fault of their own claim unemployment insurance if they were truly unemployed, said California Chamber of Commerce policy advocate Rob Moultrie, who opposes the legislation. Striking people are not the same as people who truly have been let go and have no idea where their next paycheck will come from. But someone on strike knows where their job is. Moultrie said labor advocates are capitalizing on the strike to push this policy proposal that they hope to push through for years. Here's the problem. The federal government, the federal government gets involved like with emergency unemployment and things like that. If California wishes to do it, fine, but there can't be any federal funds that go into it. If that's what California wishes to do. If California wishes just to go completely and totally bankrupt, that's up to the state of California, as long as no federal funds ever is involved in that. If that's what the legislature wishes to do, well, then, that's up to California, as long as there's no federal funds.
Yeah, the great concern would be for all of us, down the road, all of us who actually think beyond the bubble of today, would be the fact that they drain their coffers and then all of a sudden, years later, and not too many years, they go to the federal government and say, hey, we're broke. We need a bailout. Look, I guess the people of California can decide if they want to give striking workers unemployment benefits. All right. Let them do their little state experiment on that. Great. My question would be, for how long? I mean,
that's a great point.
Because, I know they'll come back and say, well, this is going to be temporary, but at least it will help. And it could be, 6 months. I don't know. I don't know how long the strike goes on, but if it goes on for 6 months, when people, by the way, has anybody even noticed the strike yet?
We're all missing the late night shows.
I have a friend who's a friend who's on the picket lines, and he's getting older. He's already maxed out his union benefits. He did years ago. So his retirement benefits are going to be the same. They could go back to work tomorrow, and he could work for another 10 years, 15 years.
Mm-hmm. And
he still can't get any more from retirement and health care than he's already going to get. I'm not saying he doesn't care about the strike. He actually does care very much about the strike. But, he's part of another division. He's not one of the actors or writers. He's part of another group that he says has been ignored and not getting their what they deserve to get from the movie studios. But he's been on that kick for a long time. But if the state wants to start handing out unemployment money, now I've never collected unemployment. Members of my family have. Knock on simulated wood grain plastic. I think in our state it has to be like if you're fired for cause, I don't think you can collect unemployment. There are certain rules regarding that unemployment, but. I don't know what the rules are in California. I guess they can change the rules if they want to.
Now, here's something I didn't know. This didn't get a lot of news. You had, let me see, the last thing California needs is more ways of paying people not to work, said Representative Kevin Kiley. Our state currently has the second highest unemployment in the nation and is last in the country in wage growth. The California Republican added that his home state so badly bungled the management of the unemployment system that it took out a nearly $20 billion loan from the federal government and then defaulted on it. Billions of fraudulent unemployment claims were taken out in California during COVID-19, according to California officials. The unemployment legislation is expected to be introduced by Senate Appropriations Chairman Anthony Portantino and co-authored by another Democrat Assembly member, reported Politico. Well, if you're in, where does the money come from if you're already in? Is the $18 billion in debt, is that what you owe the federal government? And is the federal government going to collect on it? And shouldn't the federal government have, before you come up with anything else, have first dibs on that money?
Yeah.
One would think.
You would think.
I'm just looking to see the California defaults. Let me just see here. There it is. California defaults on $18.5 billion in debt, leaving state businesses holding the bag. This is a Hoover institution, and this is from April 11th of this year. Little did California businesses know that they were co-signers on the state's nearly $20 billion loan from the federal government that was used to cover California's unemployment fund shortfall during COVID-19. The ugly truth became apparent when the state recently decided to stop making payments on this loan. What makes this default even more egregious is that the Stone Age era IT system of the state's Employment and Development Department opened the floodgates to bad actors, permitting more than $30 billion in fraudulent unemployment claims during the pandemic. Those receiving fraudulent payments included incarcerated felons, a person impersonating a 1-year-old, and a person impersonating Senator Dianne Feinstein. A single residential address received checks for around 60 separate individuals filing from that address. With an unpaid federal unemployment insurance loan, the federal government then raises the employment insurance tax immediately by 0.3% on each business within the state and an additional 0.3% each year after that until the loan is fully repaid. The normal federal unemployment tax rate is 0.6% per year, which means that California businesses will be paying several multiples of the normal federal tax rate before the loan is retired. The state's legislative analyst office predicts that repaying the loan through higher taxes on businesses is not expected until 2029 or 2030, and note that retiring the debt could take longer depending on the state's economic performance. A recession would almost certainly delay repayment, and the odds of a recession over the next 7 years are significant. The state's decision to default is inexcusable. California recorded a nearly $100 billion state budget surplus last year thanks to the state's top earners that could have been used to repay the debt. The state received $27 billion in federal COVID aid that it could have used to repay the debt. The state's record $300 billion plus 22-23 budget could have retired the debt. Even after defaulting, the state could have resumed its payments this year and offset the tax burden on businesses as it planned to do in the 2023-2024 budget. But as the state's finances continue to decline, the state has walked back making payments or offsetting higher business federal unemployment insurance taxes. So what they said was, we're not going to pay it out of the general fund. Right. We're not going to pay it out of the surplus that they had at one point. That's gone, though. The surplus is gone.
Right.
We're not going to do that. We're simply going to default on the payment, and when we default on it, well, then the way that it goes is that we simply tax businesses. We can continue our spending. We continue to increase taxes, and the federal government, or the federal government would just tax the businesses until the loan is paid off. So we can default. We still have to pay, but we're not going to pay. It won't affect our budget because the money will come directly from businesses to the federal government.
Right.
Wow.
Man, imagine the private sector getting away with that kind of scam.
22 states received federal unemployment loans during the pandemic, and California is just one of the 4 states that has not repaid the debt. At the end of last year, California owed nearly 2/3 of the outstanding $27.5 billion federal unemployment insurance debt, among those 4 states.
Hey, do we want to take a guess at the other 3 states?
Take a guess. You don't have. I have it right here.
Okay. Illinois?
Yes.
New York?
Yes. One more.
Well, the last one is in Florida.
Nope. Not Texas. Not Florida.
Oregon?
Connecticut.
I was going to say, I don't hear a lot of the deadbeat stuff around Oregon, but I just thought Portland is in such horrible state. Maybe they just gave up on everything.
Yeah, the other states with unpaid debt are New York, Illinois, and Connecticut, all of which are high tax and high spending states that are losing population to other states.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you think about that, Connecticut doesn't, quite frankly, just by the numbers, doesn't have much of a population in terms of losing population to other states. But New York and California, I mean, it is floodgates out of those 2 states especially. What did we say? They've lost $1 trillion each?
Was
it
California,
$1 trillion each?
New York, the story yesterday was $1 trillion each in assets of funds that were controlled. So technically they didn't lose it like
revenue. It wasn't revenue.
But they lost those assets have moved away from California and New York.
It's insane.
I know. And that's, that you and I've had long conversations that I think we're going to see like never before. And I think COVID was probably the last straw. You talked about the company of somebody that was going to do some investments in California, and after actually examining it, said, we can't do this.
The accounting department came back and said, this is what you're going to be dealing with within 5 years.
Right.
You're going to want to leave. You're going to have to leave because you're not going to be able to make a profit.
And so you wonder what's going to happen, because I think businesses now have come to the decision. Again, we've talked about businesses have seen the abstract finally hit reality. And they're like, we can't, why would you start a business long-term in California when you can say, let's go to Texas?
Unless it's U-Haul. I don't know why you would do it.
No, I mean, it's sad because, look, there's a lot of, California's a part of the United States.
I've said,
and I love United States citizens.
I've said it for a long time.
And California not doing well
hurts us all.
It hurts us all. There is no, there can be a benefit of getting new businesses, but if California fails and New York fails and Illinois fails, it does slow down economic growth overall.
I've traveled to California so many times, and about New York, of course, being from New York. But I've traveled to California so many times, and I've said it over the years. It's such first of all, a beautiful state. I mean, it's just amazing. But beyond that, the resources and the productivity of the individuals. If you think of the makeup of the productivity of the individuals, the talent pool in California alone, it's staggering. Without the government restrictions, the state government restrictions in California, I don't know what our economy would be like.
And I love Illinois. I lived in Illinois. I worked in Rockford and in Chicago. I worked for our great affiliate WLS and then in Chicago and WROK in Rockford.
Yeah,
I loved living there. I absolutely loved living there. I love that state. And it's funny because if I ever fly into Chicago, when you're in radio, you lived in so many places, you have more in your mind. There's places where you feel comfortable, like it's home.
Right.
Whenever I'm landing in Chicago, it's like home.
Yeah.
The same thing. And I haven't lived in Oregon in the longest time.
Also a beautiful state, by the way. Yeah.
But when I land there or anywhere in Florida, where I used to work in Florida, it's like I land, it's like, okay, I'm home.
Yeah. Right.
And I always get that feeling. So I love Illinois. And I love Western New York, where I grew up. 866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. What do you think? Do you think the Democrats, Eric, will come up with an idea that we should be paying the college loans of all the Hollywood writers and actors on strike?
Yeah, I think not just the college loans, because I don't think they're worried about college. I think we're going to be paying the multi-million-dollar mortgage loans for them. Because, listen, it's hard to live in a small house.
How about subsidizing woke films? Taxpayer subsidizing of woke films.
Oh, I thought we
Would that be
were
a good
already.
idea?
I thought we were already doing that. I'm sorry. Did I miss something?
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Listen when and where you choose. If you can't listen live overnight. Well, you and I have been talking about the story that was out the other day about $1 trillion in financial assets being moved out in the recent past from both California and New York. And I happened to see this yesterday on Fox Business. Larry Kudlow talking with economist Steve Moore about this and sort of making a lot of the same points that we have when you look at the population, of these states that are moving out, when you look at the fact that you have billionaires that are moving out, and because you have tax systems in these states that take so much out of, out of the billionaires that are there, that when they move, it has even a bigger effect than just average people moving out. But you've got both moving out. You've got regular people that can't afford to live there, and then billionaires that can live wherever they want, saying, why am I paying? Think about this. If you were a billionaire, I'd be gone paying 13% more?
Yeah, no.
13%?
No.
If you're a billionaire, 13%, and then they're talking about a wealth tax?
Yeah. No.
I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm gone now. I'm not waiting around. And then you look at companies, and this is the thing that we looked at, that we have looked at, and we both talked about this. In my head, I always hear you saying it, that you're not going to have California become Republican next week, next year, in 5 years, and in all likelihood, not 10 years. So if you're a company that is in California, you don't see where you say, well, we might be able to flip to a more Republican state and become more business friendly.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that in the future. Any long-term plans, which is long-term capital investment in an Illinois, in New York, in a California, where you're saying, okay, we want to move to a state that has a large population, therefore a diverse workforce. And so you look at some of the bigger states if you're a major company, and that would naturally be Florida, Texas, California. Or, not that you can't find it in big metropolitan areas. You can, but if you look at all the big metropolitan areas in the United States, they're all Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it and you say, well, they're not going to change anytime soon. And so even though we believe, short term we might be able to make money, long term we can't, we just can't do it. And so we've asked that question, will we, like we've never seen before, see huge population gains in states like Florida and Texas? And Texas can absorb. I was reading the other day about how they expect, we talk about, how Dallas-Fort Worth is expanding. And in the county that I live in, Tarrant County, Fort Worth, is the fastest growing place in America right now. Mm-hmm. You may have other, and Dallas-Fort Worth probably is number one in numbers, maybe not percentage, because a lot of them go by percentage. And so Austin is viewed as a great place. But if you look at Austin right now, if you look at the mess the police department is in right now.
Well, you got the police chief that's retiring. He's stepping down. They can't keep any police on the force because, what did they say, 800 police officers in the last year or two that are just gone.
Yeah, might as well go to a suburb. I'm going to work in a suburb where it's less dangerous.
I'll get my training. I'll get my experience for a couple of years, and I'll move out to where it's less dangerous and it pays more.
And so you look at it, and you wonder, what is the situation going to be like? And COVID again, multiplied it, and we may be dealing with it again. I saw the one, it was a college in Atlanta, and in Hollywood right now. I mean, whoever's going to work, everybody needs to mask up. Well, we're going to have a repeat of all this again. And so you see that, COVID changed our society in so many different ways, and it did give the recognition of what liberals are willing to do, and not only what liberals are willing to do to lock down a society, but they will not only lock down a society and keep you from doing the things that you wish to do, but then they'll cover up the truth. They'll censor the truth. They'll censor ideas. And we know what they wish to do when it comes to money. Think about it. California talking about putting the wealth tax in and then punishing you if you move to another state.
Yeah.
We're going to get your wealth, and if you move, we're still going to get your wealth for years after that. Well, you're just saying, please leave the state. And so they were having the discussion yesterday. I want to play what Steve Moore had to say about that story of the $1 trillion in assets leaving both California and New York.
This story of $1 trillion that has migrated out of California and New York is a whale of a story. And it's really the story of what's happened in America over the last 10 years is this massive migration of people and wealth and jobs, too, Larry, out of those cities. Now, New York, you worked on Wall Street. That's where you really made your name, Larry. One thing I could never understand about Wall Street is how is it that a city that is the financial capital of the world, why would they have the highest dividend tax, the highest capital gains tax, the highest corporate tax virtually in the country and virtually in the world? It would be like Idaho putting a special tax on potatoes. I mean, none of this makes any sense. And so you see this migration that is hurting these states so terribly. You mentioned my home state of Illinois, which I love. I love Chicago. Ken Griffin, who was the CEO of Citadel Capital, he moved out of Chicago and moved to Florida. And to Liz's point, it wasn't just the taxes, which are very high in Chicago. Liz, he said he moved out because he didn't think his workers were safe to go to work in Chicago. So there are so many problems in these blue cities. And if they don't turn it around, these blue states and blue cities are going to become deserts.
But the time has passed.
Wow. And they said they don't turn it around, but I think let's play Larry Kudlow. Okay. I think it's just the time has passed.
All right.
I mean, I think the time has passed. They're moving.
Maybe.
They're moving, and they're not going to move back in the next year. These are long-term commitments, Liz. By the way.
So there you go.
By the way, Idaho does have a special tax on potatoes.
Do they?
It's 12.5 cents per 100 pounds. True story. Sorry. I hate to deflate something, a really solid point, but that's how stupid things have gotten. The Idaho Potato Commission is a state agency with many responsibilities, including the promotion of Idaho potatoes. The commission is funded by a tax levied on all Idaho-grown potatoes. It is currently set at 12.5 cents for every 100 pounds of potatoes. Stupid tater tots.
and the thing is, because I've lived all over the country, and I do worry about what's going to happen to people because of the policies. But it's many of the policies, and I know I know there are many. You get outside of New York, or you get out of the cities, for example, in New York. Look at the number of red counties, the rural counties. And so you've got great conservatives in New York. You have great conservatives in California. You have great conservatives in Illinois. I'm talking about the people that are looking at what's going on in their state, and they're just like, but I've always lived here. My family's lived here. Met people in small and medium-sized towns that don't want to move, and the realization is, we're going to have to. And I feel bad, and I look at this, and after COVID, especially when we've seen what is happening with the population shift. I was watching something on YouTube yesterday that was talking about the cities that are losing population. Los Angeles, between 2020 and 2022, I was blown away by the number of people that have left Los Angeles. It's just like, whoa.
And somehow traffic is getting worse.
Yeah. And they're talking about the metro, the whole metro area. And I worry. I mean, I'm concerned about it. And then I'm like, well, why am I concerned about it? California doesn't care. The politicians don't care. The people are still going to elect the same politicians. Okay, I guess I can still feel bad, but I'm not going to feel too bad because they keep asking for it. It's the old Animal House Kevin Bacon. Thank you, sir. May I have another?
I just don't want Democrats moving to Texas. That's my only concern. Go to Florida. Keep going. Keep going. No, that's
go to Florida. It's like the
Florida's that way.
The weather is much nicer in Florida.
That's
Democrats,
right.
Yes,
and don't believe all the hype about all the gators. It's not true. It's a myth. But not true. You might want to keep your dog inside.
Don't worry. They only attack Democrats.
That's right. And keep your dog inside. But seriously, keep your dog inside. Those are when you look at it, though, it really is the resources, both human resources and natural resources of not that humans aren't natural. There are some people in Hollywood that aren't natural. Let's face it. But those resources, tremendous resources in the state of California. Imagine deregulation. Imagine how productive that state could be. And we talked earlier, Illinois, New York, how productive these states could be. What a massive, massive, massive economy the U.S. would have. But I mean, you wouldn't be able to keep people out of those states if that were the case. If wealth were expanding in those states, true expansion of wealth in those states, you wouldn't be able to keep people out of it. And it would be mind-boggling, the revenue of how they could brag about how much money they have for this and that. But that's the problem. They get into that, and they start doing what? They start spending the money. They start saying, well, what we need to do is we need to control it. What we need to do is, and then all of a sudden you have overregulation, and you're to the point of, well, we're going to regulate everything to death, and they've almost completed that task.
And you think about where the insanity is greatest, where the insane liberalism exists, and it's in all of these major cities in the liberal states. Not that there aren't Democrats, cities outside of it. You and I are talking about, Austin. And we've often said liberals love Austin because they can live in capitalism, pure capitalism, and succeed, and then pretend that they hate it, and then throw in a ton of other liberal ideas, which still helps to destroy a community and doesn't make it as safe as it could be, as we're seeing, for example, in Austin.
Right.
And some of the insanity in some of the major cities, even here in Texas, that are Democrat liberal run. But the fact is, you are much closer. It's much easier if you're a business in one of these liberal cities in Texas to move 10 miles to the suburbs where sanity exists.
Right. Yep.
And you don't have to worry about crime.
Right.
And you still live in a state that, believes in capitalism than it is to move 1,000 miles.
I mean, that's exactly what you have. I live in a suburb I am 0.75 miles, 3/4 of a mile north of the Dallas city limit. By design, I'm not living inside the city of Dallas because I've seen the city council over the years, even before I lived here. It's just absolutely crazy. And you can move out. You can move, of course, much further out. I mean, there are people that you and I both know. I mean, you travel roughly 30 minutes each way. It's worth it if you've got, you've got the scenic view. You've got a moat around your castle.
Well, I'm still only, by the way, the crow flies about 4 miles from Dallas.
Right.
It reaches. It reaches out. Reaches out. That far. And,
but I was going to make the point that people will travel like we know people. I think you and I both know people that will go an hour and a half each way. They'll drive an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half in the evening, to get to and from work.
Yeah, but in Dallas during the day that could be 3 miles.
That could be. Especially if you stop at the liquor store on your way to work. And I wondered, too, how much they really thought they were going to be able to, legalization of marijuana, that they were really going to be able to tax their way, a marijuana tax on recreational marijuana. They were going to be able to tax their way to fiscal sanity. I wonder how many in government in states, especially California, thought that was going to be the case.
Well, we know because we heard it here and were criticized by saying it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I was always legalize it. Don't give it a special tax. When they legalized recreational use of potatoes in Idaho in 1937, they were screaming the same thing, and my ancestors were screaming, no, don't tax them. And here we are, 12.5 cents per 100 pounds.
Wait a minute, can't you get buzzed by taking oh, no, that's bananas.
Yeah, don't smoke the peel of a potato. That's not a good idea.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Like the chief financial officer of any company, you have to be concerned about rising costs, especially without increases in revenue. Trying to reduce costs, let alone make sense of them, can be a complicated task. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. A penny saved could be $1,000 earned. Saving just 1 penny per mile over 100,000 miles driven annually will deliver $1,000 to the bottom line at the end of the year. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Shell Rotella with advanced synthetic technology. For more information, go to overdriveonline.com to the Overdrive's Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on Business 101 and many other topics.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So we have the debate tonight. Larry Elder not a part of it. He's suing the RNC, saying he has fulfilled the qualifications. But 7 candidates will be up on the stage. Look, for primary debates like this, I understand that the Republicans want to put it on. I don't need to watch a debate. I know where they all stand.
Yeah, sure.
To me, and I really wonder, they all basically have, they all share 90% of the same things.
Yeah.
Now, I look at a Christie and say, nope, because anybody who would actually say that Mr. Wray of the FBI, that he would reappoint's done a wonderful job. Chris Christie, who claims to be blunt and tell the truth, is absolutely delusional on that one. We'll continue coming up.
The fourth branch of government. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric. I'm Gary. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Listen when and where you want if you can't listen live overnight. Yeah, so for me, I basically know where everybody stands, but you never know. I always look for in a debate when somebody's going to say something stupid. Stupid. Let me say that again here as I had a little hiccup there. And you look at it, for example, you look at, I'll pick out three things that just come top of mind. Chris Christie talking about Mr. Wray from the FBI and that, he's doing a great job and he would keep him as FBI director. It shows to me, it's almost as if the Justice Department is working against Trump, he's going to be for it. That's the impression you get, because you can't look at this Department of Justice and not fear. At the minimum, I believe it's more than this, but at the minimum, that the perception of corruption is all over it and over Merrick Garland. Yeah. So even if I thought that Wray was doing a good job, he'd have to go because I want to be able to set the agenda and the imagery of my presidency. So I would never say that. But the fact is, Robert Ray, as we all know, did not. He tried to hide the information that the whistleblower said existed, the FD 1023.
Yeah, Christopher Wray. Yeah.
What did I say?
Robert Ray. His brother had nothing to do with it. I don't know if there is
Maybe
a
I'm thinking of Robert Cray.
Maybe.
Yeah, the guitarist.
Brilliant musician.
I say.
It's very similar.
Don't combine music and politics.
It's the number one rule.
And so when he said that, it just showed you like, well, then I have to question your seriousness of really rooting out corruption.
Yeah.
If you even stated something like that. Then I look at Nikki Haley and the whole thing that she said about Disney, come to South Carolina. We'd be happy to have you here. It clearly shows at that point you have to question whether she would really be serious when it comes to the culture wars that exist today.
Right.
And the culture wars, when we say it, I don't like calling them culture wars. I like calling them issues of substance of racism and the insanity of the liberal transgender activist movement of the mutilation of children. Culture wars give you a thing that, I'm simply in a different culture. You get to the specifics of it. By her saying that, it shows, to me, gives me an indication she's not really serious about this. And that's extremely important to me when you have the opposition party that clearly promotes identity politics, racism, the mutilation of children, and the insanity, the misogyny of the radical transgender activist movement. And it means she doesn't take that seriously. And then Ramaswamy, when you hear, for example, now he's tried to backtrack, on it, so I don't really know where he stands on it, but he was talking about some hard drugs should be legalized. And that, when you look at what's going on, and these are the clear things of things that are so obvious, what's going on in Portland right now, that everybody knows about. We're not talking about the legalization of pot. We're talking about what they've done in Portland, where all drugs have basically been legalized. And other liberal cities are considering doing it, and everywhere it's tried, it's a complete and total disaster where you're basically dealing with scenes that look like a third world country. For him to say that, it's one thing to say, okay, I think they should legalize pot. Why did he have to delve into the harder drugs to begin with? And if you're trying to make the case, the harder
thing is he didn't actually get into the discussion, because if that's going to be one of your sets of talking points as a part of your campaign, then you really have to get into the discussion. And he really didn't venture into it, so it didn't really serve any value at all. It's not going, because what you're saying, basically what he was implying is, I'm open to the conversation. That doesn't get you anywhere. I don't think now it is That's at the top of the mind. That there's any urgency at all.
And then he did get into the microdoses, for example, of hallucinogens that might be able to help PTSD or whatever.
Yeah.
I still think that's an unproven science at this point. But the fact is, that isn't, when you talk about that, well, that would still be prescription use if you're talking about that, not the legalization of hard drugs. Mm-hmm. It's a different concept. Should we make something that is viewed as a Schedule I drug? Should we make that because we find out that, the FDA, whatever, finds out that it has, medical purposes, that then you allow that to become a prescription? That's different mindset than saying, I believe we should be legalizing some hard drugs. You would say, no, I think we should be legalizing them as prescriptions for people that have PTSD and other things, because from what we've seen through trials, it seems to have some success, and we need to investigate that more closely. I have no problem if you said that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so those are the things that sit in the back of my mind, and then you wonder, okay, who's going to say something, what I view as being a stupid comment to make when you don't have to make it. And I'm just giving 3 examples, there. And now I'm picking 3 candidates who really are not going to be president of the United States. I forgot who said it. Was Charles Cook from National Review that Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, and Nikki Haley are just trying to they're running for vice president or a cabinet member.
All right, yeah. I don't know. I don't know about Ramaswamy. I think there could, at some point down the road, there could be a day where I could see him in the White House. I don't believe he's going to get the nomination this time.
No.
I don't. No. He's the only one, by the way, on the rise, and it's not that much of a rise. What people were looking for in the polls was a rise with DeSantis, and it's been quite the opposite.
Well, now this would be interesting. For example, the Ramaswamy, it would be interesting to see what would happen if, for example, Trump dropped out.
Yeah.
If Trump said, look, I've got too much on my plate right now, maybe 2028 after we get this all settled. I don't believe that's going to happen. But if Trump said that, then you would probably it would be DeSantis Ramaswamy at that point. And then anything could happen over a period of 4 or 5 months. But I don't believe that's going to happen. Trump's not going to drop out. And I think that's when Ramaswamy would be, and he may have a political future. Don't know whether it's going to be president. Maybe he'll be a senator first. Maybe he'll be a congressperson and then move up that route. Maybe he will get that much publicity where he doesn't need to have a political background. Trump proved you don't need a political background. Perot proved you don't have to have a political background. Mm-hmm. Perot, back in the late 80s, early 90s, he cut his own throat by dropping out and then coming back in again, and people went, okay, forget about him. But I think in some of the polls before he dropped out, he was leading as an independent.
Yeah, sure.
So people will look at it and say, okay, are you a business person? Have you come up with some decent ideas?
Well, and this is the question: is what starts to resonate? Does anything resonate as a matter of being on a debate stage? I don't know. I start. You and I talked about it yesterday. The ultimate long-term or the ultimate impact of in this, at least in this election cycle, of any set of debates, whether it's now or during the general election, what impact do they have? And I don't know that because technology has changed everything. It used to be you would sit there and you would watch it, and then you would wait for others to digest and then tear it apart. But actually, those paying attention have become pretty decent at being fact checkers. There still are plenty of people out there that are willfully ignorant and choose not to engage. I don't know what's going to change their mind if you can't get it done with what's going on right now. And, you look at a DeSantis, he's hit it hard on, what they call the culture wars. The reason by the way, don't have a problem using culture wars is because it is a different culture to me. The left is a different culture. It is a different culture when you say it's okay for kids to decide to mutilate themselves.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying the term culture war. I think to the average person
doesn't resonate
because
it doesn't carry the same.
Right.
It doesn't. You don't break it down. You don't know what it means to any given person. I get that. But there's the problem that DeSantis has is that for whatever reason, and keep in mind, everybody was saying, hey, who was it? Oh, it was Bill Maher that said the left is afraid of this guy because he reads. He's like Trump. He's blunt, but this guy reads. That's the I'm an independent Bill Maher liberal. And, of course, over when was it? His podcast the other night, we're just cooing over Ramaswamy and, basically calling all the other Republicans racist and implying that Reagan was okay with racism back in the day, which is absurd. But all of this, you look at like a how it changes the image of a DeSantis. The excitement around DeSantis isn't what it was before he announced. The it might come back again. I don't know how you get it. Here's what I would advise. You better trim the fat. Trim the fat from all the language you're using on the road. Now, I think for the most part, he's been pretty good. But if you have any questions, see what Ramaswamy is doing. Ramaswamy can sit down with anybody and talk the issues. Now, you want to get into the decriminalization of hard drugs? There was a huge misstep, and that may cost him ultimately. But when you're a current governor of a state that's doing very well and drawing in countless people and businesses and revenue into your state, and you've built a consensus in your party, not even just in your party, you've built a consensus from even people outside your party in your own state, you've got a massive starting point. You've got a head start. So you really have to trim the fat on getting that message out. The one thing about Ramaswamy right now that's working for him is his ability to convey ideas. The GOP could learn from that.
No, you're absolutely right. And with a confidence that isn't attempting to apologize or put anything in. Well, let me put this in context. No, this is the way it is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, and also he doesn't make it about him. I know that when you're campaigning, you kind of do, but you can campaign and convey that it is about the future of this nation. In fact, I think it's imperative that you do so.
Yes, I'm not a listless vessel. I am a vessel that has ideas, and I'm just the vessel promoting the ideas.
Vessel.
It's listful.
I come from a long line of listful vessels.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, says an impeachment inquiry might begin when Congress resumes in September. I think it's a great possibility. Also, we'll have the full quote from Kellyanne Conway on the fact that Biden will not debate whoever the candidate is. He will not debate.
I don't know how you let him on stage. If I'm advising the Biden campaign, the answer is absolutely not, and no exceptions to that rule. No, you don't let him debate, because there is, when has he been in public? And we can quit using the word gaffe. It's not gaffe anymore.
No.
When has there been anything that looked normal in any appearance that he's made recently? Each of them, even on vacation, have been disasters. Put him on a debate stage where he has to go back and forth with someone? No.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. Welcome and good morning. Hi. Here we are in debate day, first debate. Sort of the, I guess, official kickoff of the presidential campaign. Trump will not be there. Larry Elder will not be there. He is suing the RNC, saying he did meet the qualifications, or saying that he did not. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, some of the talk that was going around yesterday was, because Trump isn't showing up, does this give Biden the excuse not to debate when it comes to the general election next year? Yeah. And the point was made, well, he won't debate anybody now, including anybody else running in his party, so he doesn't need an excuse. Kellyanne Conway was on Fox News yesterday. Let me read the quote here. Will they allow Joe Biden to debate? Was the question. Kellyanne Conway, no, he won't. They won't let him out there. They hardly let him out there at all. We don't see much of him. And maybe that also means that Kamala doesn't have to debate, which they would want to avoid because she battles the teleprompter every day, and the teleprompter wins. This is really interesting. She doesn't put in the work. I can't imagine her debating another human being on policy and substance and her record. That would be terrible. I believe debates are part of the democratic process. We, the people, deserve to see the voters debate each other free of charge. So,
yeah. Look.
The teleprompter wins.
It's a great line. I don't know the ultimate impact. We talked about the undecided votes. I'm starting to wonder, in today's age, are you undecided, or are you just telling pollsters you're undecided? Are you just unengaged?
Yeah, I think the undecided are completely unengaged. We're engaged all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I like? This happened to me yesterday. When people, acquaintances, but do you really know how bad it is out there? I had to tell one friend yesterday.
Yeah.
Apparently, you keep forgetting what I do for a living. I
talk
about this 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 34 years. Come the beginning of October. So, yeah. I sort of do know.
Yeah, we kind of have an idea.
Yeah. I get that every once in a while. Do you understand how bad it is out there? No, I don't. I've only done this for 34 years here in a couple of weeks, and
I got nothing.
And we talk about all the controversial issues. No, I have no idea. I mean, is it bad?
Yeah,
that's what I need to do.
Is
it bad? What's wrong out there?
What's going on?
But I will say that I'll give you an example. When my mom was alive, she would listen. Talk radio would be on all day.
Yeah,
that's all, every single day. To the point of when I would visit, it would be on all day. And I used to be a program director. And so when you listen to radio as a program director, you're not listening the same way as somebody who just listens to your radio show.
Yeah.
Your mind's going, okay, how are they forming this debate? How are they doing here? What are they doing here? What are they doing here? All right, what's what are the commercials? What's this? How much traffic do they have? Just all those things going through your head. Mm-hmm. You're analyzing it. It becomes work. I remember telling my mom, I got to leave because I just got to leave. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, so I said, I got to get out of here for a little bit because I just couldn't handle it because you're right at work again.
Yeah. You
never get away from it.
Right.
But my mom would have it on all the time, and my dad would be there, so my dad would know. My dad, even though he's on the internet, really doesn't look at a lot of news. I have to explain to him, since my mom's been gone, he's really not paying attention much to the news. My brother does, and my brother fills him in on a lot of stuff. But I'm really amazed, how. And again, my dad's 97 years old, so my dad was always, knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But my mom, once they retired. My mom was the one that had talk radio on every day, so you know what the topics are.
Yeah.
And my dad isn't even watching the nightly news as much anymore. Or when it's on, it's just on in the background. Because that was another thing. My parents, it wasn't that they couldn't afford cable. They just, when they got it for about 6 months and said, no way are we paying for this. And so everything that they're exposed to is the mainstream media, except for talk radio, for the longest time.
Yeah.
And so I'd go over to their house and they'd have on, and I'd be getting furious. I'm like, well, that's a biased report. That's a biased report. That's a biased report. And they'd say, will you please shut up and let us watch the news?
Yeah.
But it's biased. I can't. This isn't a vacation. There is no rest in this house. People wake up. I can't get away from it. But.
No, my mom will shut me down if my dad and I are having a conversation at my parents' house. My mom, if something's on Fox News, she'll stop. Shh. Listen. I'm like, Mom, I listen to that all the time. I just want to visit. Give me just one break, and then I'll listen to Neil Cavuto. Just give me a few minutes with Dad.
And so that's just an example to me, because my dad will say, no, I don't know anything about this. I'm like, what? Oh, number one, he's 97. Number two, my mom doesn't talk radio, isn't playing all day in the house. Mm-hmm. And he's still doing stuff. I mean, he's fixing things. I mean, he's doing what my dad always does,
right? Which
is not that he didn't pay attention, but my dad's mind is always working like an engineer's mind. All right, I got to fix this over here, and I got to do this, and I got to make sure I do this. And 97, his mind is still extremely active. It's just what's going on in the world is not number one to him.
Yeah.
And so, but I meet a lot of people that have no clue as to what's going on. It's interesting, and you'll meet people. So I heard you're in talk radio.
Is that the kind of radio where you just talk?
So you're an angry person?
It's like the person that tweeted at us several years ago. Play some music. Where's the music? It's a talk show. Everybody just responded with the same thing. It's a talk show. There's no music.
Could you throw an Irish jig in there or something? I mean,
something. Clap your hands. Do something.
Maybe a polka tune.
Something. Could you hum a few bars?
But no, that's the thing when you realize, because comedians have done, a number of comedians have done the thing of when they get to, the last week of October and the last debate, and they're polling those that are undecided.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just remember, and I can't think of the guy's name, was it Frank Luntz? When Frank Luntz was doing it in 2016, it's like a couple of weeks from the election, and Hillary has debated Donald Trump. Well, I still don't know where to go on this. You probably have liberals screaming the same thing. What are you talking about? What do you mean you're undecided?
Yeah, exactly.
And these are people that really don't pay attention at all to the news. And I think that because things get so heated, I know people, when I was at my 50th high school reunion, these people most of them are, probably the vast majority are retired now.
Yeah.
But I was amazed the people I know, and I've talked about this before, that have never changed since high school. They were always into music and sports, and today all they're into is music and sports. And then once a year there'll be a topic that hits them that they hear about, and they'll say, I don't like this at all going on. Why can't we all get together?
Right.
And I know they all vote Democrat, but they really don't pay attention to the news at all.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't. They couldn't explain to you in any specific detail any of the major issues out there. Yet they vote Democrat, but they stay away from it because they hate. I just hate politics. I hate, as if that. That's, by the way. Have you ever noticed how that has become a virtue, part of virtue signaling?
Oh yeah.
That I don't pay attention to it. I don't pay attention to that because it's just nuts. Both sides are bad. And it's like,
yeah.
Oh, well, then you're a good person because you don't pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Right. Yeah. It's always this approach of, I'm going to tell you how things are, but I'm not going to pay attention to what's going on. Like, all right. Okay, fine. And always interesting when one of them wakes up. Did you see?
Yeah.
Do you know about the Russian hoax?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, welcome to 2017, dude.
And when I get that, and we're in the business of doing it,
yeah.
And did you hear about this?
Nobody's talking about it. Well, they were 6 years ago.
Did you hear about this? You got to talk about this on your show.
Yeah. No, that's the other one. Homework. No, here's what you need to do. Listen, are you writing this down? I'm writing it down mentally. Trust me, I'll remember every word. You need to talk about this. It is always. Did
you hear about this? Hillary set up Trump?
Yeah.
No, really?
What?
Should I cover that? Yeah. You mean you haven't covered it yet?
Who? Hillary who?
You mean that hurricane? Or
yeah.
that
What are you talking? Who are you talking? Hillary who? Oh, you mean Bill Clinton's wife?
That would make you part of the patriarchy.
Hashtag me what?
Hillary is her own woman. You should not label her as Bill Clinton's wife.
I don't know. What is a
woman? He doesn't.
What is a woman? Somebody tell me.
What's a woman?
Somebody get Megan Rapinoe on the phone, please. It's... But it's always, it is always it's always a process. You and I were talking during the break. what was the headline that I came across, and basically I'm asking the question: do people? Oh, it was prosecutors in Delaware, and that how they've always been donors to the Democrats, and it's like, well, but not surprised. You and I aren't surprised, but are we at the point? And I asked you this, kind of like during the Obama years. We came up with this idea that it was their strategy to lie all the time, only to get, if only to, I mean, they wanted to get away with things, but also to get the opposition screaming liar all the time. See, all they do is say liar, 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 liar. And, and of course, they're the loud side, the GOP at the time. And so they're going to get all the media attention. Of course, liberal media is not going to be on their side. So you got that going for you. And people just ignore stories like that of how many prosecutors in Delaware have been donors for the Democrats, giving money to the Democrats
and friends of Hunter Biden and Beau Biden, actual friends of them.
Actually, there is a real conflict of interest, and I wonder how many people just hear that, and all they hear is the blah, 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 and then they just turn it off. There is no doubt there are millions of people who fit that description. And that's how you get to a point of them getting away with it. The whole thing with Weiss, AG Garland. We'll get to Barr next segment. AG Garland and Director Wray. All these things could be solved if there were the political will and people were outraged over how the DOJ and intel and law enforcement has been weaponized in this nation. There is a lot of outrage on our side. How can you be on zero side? I'm not right or left. I'm in the middle, and not be outraged because you're not paying attention. That's how.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
Because one simple description, one very clear piece of evidence that points to it and shows it to you should send you on the warpath politically to say this stops today, and as a nation we demand it does.
But I want to go back to what I said previously, because I really do think that because you see it, it's become part of virtue signaling. I don't pay attention anymore because politics has just gotten too divisive.
Yes, I'm above all of that.
Right, I'm above all of it, and therefore I'm of a higher morality because I don't get involved in finding out what the truth is. Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah, they're always the one that's going to school you, and they're not going to class each day.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I want to play this audio cut from Gary Shapley, who was on Fox News yesterday, calling for a special counsel to investigate Weiss and Garland. And think about this. How would that be done? But let's hear part of this interview.
This is from the Washington Examiner today. It says at least 7 prosecutors who worked in the Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office over the last several years of the Hunter Biden investigation appear to be Democratic donors. One of them appears to have a previously unreported personal relationship with the Biden family, at one point referring to Hunter Biden as a good friend. It was also revealed that David Weiss had at one time worked with Beau Biden. It's kind of shocking that he hasn't said that he wants to step aside from this whole thing, given all of these ties, isn't it? Are you surprised that at this point in this process, he wanted to be the special counsel on this case? And what do you think is going to happen now?
Well, what we really need is we need a special counsel to investigate this investigation, and that includes the actions of U.S. Attorney Weiss, Attorney General Garland, the statements made to Congress, the letters sent to Congress over and over again. As information comes out, it's proven that what they told the American people, what they told the Congress, was not accurate. And at the end of the day, I came forward for the American people, and I put myself at risk for the American people. And at the end of the day, they need to be confident that this investigation is actually looked at independently and fairly.
So what he's saying is that Merrick Garland should appoint a special counsel that would investigate Merrick Garland's appointment of another special counsel.
Yeah. That sounds logical. I'm sure that would work.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara, because we were talking about Gary Shapley, the whistleblower, who keeps insisting on special counsels.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got a special counsel for Hunter Biden, and he's still not happy.
Yeah, right.
And now he's calling for a special counsel to look at the special counsel who would still be appointed by Merrick Garland, as if that's the solution.
Right.
That's the solution to it, which, of course, is absurd. And, look, they don't want to ask him that question because he's a whistleblower and he's been legit and he's moved it forward. But that's the question I would ask. You keep asking. And we asked this from initially when he said, I want a special counsel. And we said, why? And at the same time where Comer said, I don't want a special counsel because they'll try to hide everything. And Gary Shapley keeps calling for a special counsel. He got one. Now he's not happy with the special counsel. So he's calling for another special counsel. And just so people know, from the special counsel law, majorities of either party within the House or Senate Judiciary Committee could formally request the Attorney General appoint a special prosecutor on a particular matter. But the decision of whether or not to appoint the independent counsel remained with the Attorney General and is not reviewable in court.
Right.
So what you're saying is, I believe Merrick Garland is corrupt. I believe Weiss is corrupt. And I called for a special counsel. Merrick Garland put David Weiss in there as special counsel. I think that's corruption. So we need Merrick Garland to appoint another special counsel to show that he is corrupt.
Unless you're going to wait until January of 2025 and hopes that the GOP takes the White House, which is, if you look at the way it went down with A.G. Barr and John Durham and the assignment there, okay, fine. I look. It's when you have the New York Times, I almost said Post again, writing about this, about and the media, the mainstream media, seems to be now taking notice of not just the conflict of interest, but how bogus this whole thing is, how much cover-up there is. There's no, number one, you just pointed out why there's no point in even talking about another special counsel assignment. The people are going to be more informed, and it will, at some point, everything is going to boil over the top. And I think we're getting closer to that point. And I think if the House starts impeachment inquiry in the fall, forget it, because during that process, this won't be like a January 6th committee. This won't be like either of the Trump impeachments. This is going to be thorough. Look at what the GOP was able to do by bringing forth the whistleblowers. This is just one item that I think that they've accomplished. And you and I have not been people who carried great confidence in the GOP to get things like this done, but I do believe they've done so far a really good job at bringing this stuff to the surface. They got through that process of bringing the whistleblowers forward. And then the FD 1023 release. It brought so much awareness that the New York Times had to wake up. I mean, there's your that goes so much further than any special prosecutor assignment. You know, you and I talked about the fact that one of the whistleblowers was actually asking or suggesting there should be a special counsel assigned. And we said at the time, and had been saying all along, special counsel situation is going to sweep it under the rug. Well, one of the situations that we have here is that they may try that, but if you move on impeachment inquiry and the fact that you now isolate Hunter away from Joe, you can focus on Joe because the special counsel isn't looking into Joe Biden.
Well, you had actually we now know because of the New York Times that the man appointed to the special counsel, according to the New York Times, not the New York Post, not Fox News, but according to the New York Times, the man appointed as a special prosecutor when he was just a prosecutor attempted to sweep the Hunter Biden crimes under the rug.
Yeah, right.
Until the whistleblowers came forward, and then he changed his mind, and it was, okay, we at least have to pretend that we're being tough.
Right.
So misdemeanors, but no jail time.
Yeah, right.
And then that fell apart because that was such an absurd plea deal that the judge just asking a few basic questions within a period of a minute destroyed any type of, sweetheart deal that Hunter Biden was going to get. So the interesting thing is, I think that the New York Times story helps the Republicans get to a impeachment inquiry. And what they have to explain to the American public is we're not doing what the Democrats are doing. I know they've stated that, but they need to be precise why they're going to an impeachment inquiry, that this is not an impeachment. This is an impeachment inquiry because we are being stonewalled. Look, the New York Times, you can keep referring to the New York Times over and over again. The New York Times article that the Justice Department is corrupt, that tried to sweep the Hunter Biden situation under the rug. Having an impeachment inquiry, which would be focused on Joe Biden, which of course includes Hunter Biden because he is part of the, quote, enterprise. I don't know if they plan on using RICO law here, but they have to explain we're going to the impeachment inquiry because we believe we will have, they're stonewalling us across the board. We take this to an official impeachment inquiry, and judges will force these people to testify before us, which is why we're going to an impeachment inquiry to get to the bottom of this. And it probably is a time to do this if they have gotten everything that they believe that they could have gotten through regular means. Then you go to the impeachment inquiry, you explain it to the American people because the vast majority of the American people believe that Joe Biden, at the minimum, has been involved in an illegal cover-up of all of this. The specific questions about whether they believe he is corrupt, I haven't seen a poll lately on that, whether he is corrupt in his dealings with Hunter Biden, but it doesn't matter. The American public, I think it's 63%, believe in the latest poll that Biden is illegally covering up what was going on, which means the American public wants to know. So you have the American public that's behind you to find out the truth in this. You need to explain it to the American people, and you don't need to go about it the way that you don't have to go about it the way that the Democrats did, which destroyed their credibility. Think about this. The January 6th committee went nowhere because it was bogus, because they didn't allow for cross-examination. Go ahead, Democrats, ask any question you want.
Yeah, sure.
Because right now, as we know, Jamie Raskin and Dan Goldman, that are basically the hitmen for the Democrats, have been destroyed and destroying their own case because nothing is going their way. None of what's going on in this case, none of it is allegations by Republicans looking for allegations or a narrative by Republicans that are looking to cherry pick the evidence to show that there's a problem. Because all of the evidence comes from Hunter Biden himself, Joe Biden himself, the whistleblowers, and bank records. And what you want to be able to get with an impeachment inquiry, you need to get to the bank records in order to expose them to the American people. That's what you have to get. And then what their claim is, we can't get the bank records now. We can't get them right now. Well, you need to explain to the American public, does an impeachment inquiry get you closer to getting the bank records? Or are you on stronger legal grounds to get those bank records in an impeachment inquiry? Because by the time you get to the impeachment inquiry, you know what's in. They know what's in the reports, the SARS reports, but they can't release them.
Yeah, right.
Well, can you use, if you can't release them, can you use what you know as testimony and get it as sworn testimony that this is what these SARS reports are stating? Or does the impeachment inquiry and the ruling of a court allow you to bring that into an impeachment inquiry? That's what you need to explain. That's all the stuff that I want to know.
Well, that's it, because it appears we are at the final gate. The final gate is about the flow. It always has been about the flow of money. That's, as we have said all along, going to tell the entire story. Everything will be aligned if you can follow all of those dollars, not just from where they came, but also where they were moved to after they landed, if anywhere.
And the New York Times gives you Republicans cover now.
Yep.
Because the New York Times made it clear that what the Democrats have been promoting, Raskin and Goldman, is a lie.
Is a lie. And gave credibility to the whistleblowers, as you pointed out.
Gives credibility to the whistleblowers, that it's backing up what the whistleblowers have said, and it's backing up what the Republicans have said.
Right.
And nobody has attacked the New York Times yet. And so it helps you get to the impeachment inquiry by, Comer and whoever else coming out and saying, look, the New York Times ran the story.
Yeah.
And the New York Times story backs up everything that we have stated so far. The American public is already questioning and already are very suspicious that the entire Biden family, including Joe, is corrupt.
Yeah. Right.
All the polling shows that. All you need to do is keep adding on with the legitimate evidence and what the New York Times has said. Look at this story here. The Washington Post columnist changes his mind, calls for Joe Biden to be fully investigated over Hunter's business dealings. He wrote, Henry Olson, that he originally long dismissed stories regarding Hunter Biden, but recent revelations have changed that. There's more than enough evidence to meet a thorough investigation of President Biden's involvement in his son's business dealings, Olson argued. He shared that under recent testimony from Hunter Biden business associates Devin Archer, as well as claims that Biden used different aliases while dealing with Ukrainian policy, merits some suspicion. And so does the 20 fake companies, the LLCs.
Yeah.
The LLC, did I say it right?
LLC, yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, you were the first one to say it. Oh, no, it's just an illusion. It's just Hunter, taking advantage of Joe. And 9 other family members that have received cash through these fake companies and accounts going through these fake companies to distribute to them. So is the entire Biden family corrupt except Joe? Are they all using Joe?
Yeah, none of those Joe defenders tried to make the point that the other family members didn't receive money.
Right, yeah. So is everybody corrupt? Is everybody in the Biden family using poor old Joe?
Right.
And he just loves all of them And because he loves all of them so deeply, they're all taking advantage of him because of his love.
Well, that's another thing with the special prosecutor. The assignment into Hunter Biden has to lead to other family members. I don't know how far it will go in terms of their law breaking, but it will have to include that flow of money. How can it not? Unless it's, of course, simply bogus, and they go at it just like the entire Russian hoax special prosecutor. Those are the items that are on the table. This idea of suggesting that it should be a special prosecutor to investigate the special prosecutor. Who is that going to be? Oh, I know an attorney. His name is Hunter Biden. That's how ludicrous things are right now. And they're upfront about it. They're practically bragging.
I could see
about it.
Merrick Garland appoints a special prosecutor to look at the corruption of Merrick Garland and the special prosecutor, and the new special prosecutor, Hunter Biden.
Is Hunter Biden.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. California's seen some of the highest gas prices of the year. And just reading this one article here from Newsweek, gas prices rise to $7 at one Florida gas station. So we will get to that and more all coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right. Jennifer Aniston is so over the cancel culture. Is there no redemption? There you go.
Are they still canceling the TV show Friends? I mean, it's on, where is it? On Netflix? I don't know where it is now.
Yeah, didn't they get hit big time for
basically outdated material? It's that's the crime.
Or figuring out Ross's true gender.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, dude, it's Jennifer Aniston. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But
you shouldn't be torn.
Yeah. There is no break. Shouldn't ever be a break.
I did. What's the? What was the woman that liked Joey? I never really watched. I don't think I ever watched a full episode. No, one time I did.
Well,
that was the Thanksgiving episode.
Agent, and then
then
there was the
one that talked.
Yeah,
Joey. I saw her on YouTube a couple of months ago. And she just said how much she loved that role.
Yeah.
How great it was, and that her laugh was the best laugh ever.
Yeah. That was a very good character.
Yeah, it was a great character.
But that's it. I mean, it really is. It's outdated material. And remember what was happening? They were getting the feedback of the younger generation. That's so weird to say. The younger generation was watching the classic sitcom Friends. I need a nap.
Oh, man.
And they were they were responding going, well, I feel guilty for laughing. It's funny, but you can't say that these days. Yeah, you can. It's comedy. It's comedy. Of course it's absurd. It's supposed to be absurd. I mean, you had 6 affluent friends in New York City, and they didn't have one friend who was a person of color? Not one? That's how absurd it was. We all know it wasn't real.
Was that one of the criticisms?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They brought on, I think it was Aisha Tyler. They brought into the show in one of the last few seasons. I don't know if somebody was dating her or if she was a friend of somebody. Like
Ross?
most
Was it
sitcoms,
Ross again?
after the first couple of years, I haven't watched television in a long time, and so it really was probably season 2 or 3 was the last time I really was able to watch sitcoms because they weren't streaming yet, and so to watch it again, that's back when, remember when a television season was 22 episodes?
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy to think about.
They did more earlier on in the 70s. They did even more than 22.
Right.
There were some that were up to 30.
Yeah. And so I didn't watch when I started working here in the mid 90s. It was, the schedule didn't allow me to watch primetime TV. So occasional reruns. Then when it went into syndication, you would catch it, but I didn't keep up with it later. But that was one of the criticisms. There were no characters except white characters that were the main characters. But then later, it was when they had young people, college age kids watching it, binge watching it, and it was very popular.
Yep.
At one time on Netflix. They were saying, "Oh, I'm laughing, but I shouldn't be. You can't say that. It's a joke. You don't have to put any value into it, but it only has the value that you assign to it.
I remember,
and quite frankly, it's mundane. It's not racist. It's not. If you want to be offended by everything, then you're going to be offended by everything. It doesn't matter whether you're watching comedy or not.
Remember, Seinfeld had the same criticism.
Yeah.
How come there's no black major character?
Yeah. Right.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Steve Byrne was telling us that one time.
Mm-hmm.
Remember he did it?
Yep.
Was it TNT where he had, or TBS?
TBS.
Where Sullivan and Son.
Mm-hmm.
Sons.
Right.
And he was like, it's like, where's, you don't have enough minorities. He's like, I'm Korean American.
Yeah.
We have an Egyptian.
Right.
We have a black guy.
Right.
And we have a white guy, and we're in a multicultural bar. Where's the gay character?
Yeah, that's it.
That's what he told me. Because that's what you have to go through. I'm telling the story that I want to tell here, and it's like they didn't want that. They wanted, tell us exactly why we should be running this show, which means you have to cover all identity bases.
Well, you've got too many people. Yeah. You have too many green lighters in Hollywood. I mean, they're not green lighting anything at the moment, but you have too many green lighters in Hollywood that are asking silly questions like, why is it important that we do this movie now? Why now? In other words, what statement does it make about today's... No.
Money.
Do a movie that has a bunch of silly stuff in it if you're doing a comedy. Make people laugh. And if they show up, they show up. If they don't, it probably wasn't funny. I wouldn't know what to do if you were to go out there and screen as a new movie Blazing Saddles. That wouldn't be made today, by the way. That movie would not be made today. But, Mel Brooks tells this story about how Warner Brothers called him in. It was a top movie executive at Warner Brothers and had a whole list of things of him to cut out of the movie after they screened it. And they said, these are the items we want you to cut out. But he only actually cut out one. And it was a Cleavon Little line, and he cut that out.
Oh, I know the line.
Yeah. And so that was the only thing he did, and then they released it. But with all of the language in that movie, Richard Pryor was one of the main writers of that movie. Mm-hmm. And you had a number of comedians that were on board. Cleavon Little ended up getting the lead role, basically. And you would never get that movie made today. But what we have forgotten is that the comedy lies in the absurdity. It wasn't celebrating the language that was used in that movie. It was just the opposite. It was pointing out how absurd it was, how absurd these characters were that were basically delivering those lines, that were saying those things. That's where the comedy lives, is, man, how ignorant are these people? You're shaking your head and you're laughing at it. And, you get away from that because, sorry, I'm offended. Everybody quit laughing because I am offended. If you're offended, don't pay the money to go see the movie. Don't spend your time in front of that screen. And the cancel culture, I think, has lost their power. I think they're just about over, except for the fact that you still might get every once in a while, I think, probably their lasting effect, maybe, and I don't know how long it lasts, is the effect of those greenlighters. The ones saying, well, we're not going to make this movie right now. We're not going to. Well, people want to see certain things. When you look at what movies and what songs are going to the top of the charts. I mean, we broke it down. Rich Men North of Richmond.
Yes.
First ever to top a Billboard chart without having ever any other presence on a Billboard chart.
I saw that, yeah.
The Jim Caviezel movie is well over $200 million now.
Well,
They made it for what? Well, look, $10 million, $12 million?
We got. Was it a tweet or an email that we got that someone said, "I'm doing what Eric and Gary are doing. I'm going to get. I really want to watch good content." Basically, this was a message. I'm paraphrasing it completely,
right?
But I'm going to go to YouTube and pay to get a commercial free. But I think about it, and what I watch the most is people produce. Now, some of it stinks. I don't know if you've noticed, but almost every professional major league team, everybody is doing a podcast with, video podcast with decent graphics, but then the content of them talking sucks. But I'm impressed. I'm impressed with what they're doing because, the things you can do on your laptop today and with a microphone and a camera. You can produce something that's pretty awesome. Now, your own podcast and the content you put in, for a lot of the people, it's going to take them time to do it. But I think that's wonderful that people get an opportunity, to put something on YouTube. And if you get 20 people, then it's 40 people, then it's 100 people. Whether you make a dime at it or not, it's the fact that somebody is finding your content interesting. And I know for me, I'm looking for content from regular people. I know what I'm going to get from Hollywood, and the stuff I like, which is a minority of the stuff that they put out, is great. The other stuff I don't care about. I'd rather watch some Joe show me how he's building his tiny home because the editing and everything else that they do in it is so professional that they make it interesting.
Well, Sound of Freedom Yeah, so it's, what, $14 million they spent, and so far it's grossed over $175 million.
That's a nice...
And they believe $178 million, and they
profit.
believe it's going to hit $200 million
And
eventually.
What will it do on streaming eventually?
Right, exactly. And you look at that, and it's not one of those topics that people want to, approach. It's not one of these, but it does have a very strong message that I think ultimately has a positive outcome, and that is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things, that you look at the purpose of why you put something out. And you were talking about content creators on YouTube. These content creators are doing something, many times it's something that they have a great deal of experience in. So they have years of doing something, and then all of a sudden they just put a GoPro up and start rolling. Or they've hit something, it goes viral, they do something, and then all of a sudden they discover, people have an interest in that, and then all of a sudden it kind of takes off. I mean, there's everything from, shade tree mechanics on, okay, guys, you're not going to believe this. Let's get into it. Here, I'll use my wife's car, and then the guy pops the hood, and he's going to get in there, and he's got a ton of followers, and he's doing his thing. I mentioned the gamers recently that have, many of them have now gone to YouTube. They've actually signed contracts at YouTube, and they've made an industry out of playing video games. Well, good for them. It's not my thing, but they found an audience. They found people who are interested in it, and they were able to monetize it. That, to me, is a great story. When Hollywood says, no, we're going to be the guardian of people's conscience, we're going to decide what's important, what's not important. You don't. And neither do your trophies. They just don't.
But as she said, she goes, this is Jennifer Aniston. That's how we started this. I'm so over cancel culture, she told the Wall Street Journal. I probably just got canceled by saying that. I just don't understand what it means. Is there no redemption? I don't know. I don't put everybody in the Harvey Weinstein basket. She said, for example, she knew who he was, thought he was creepy, and, when he wanted to talk to her about a movie, there was somebody else in the room, and she made sure there was in her trailer or whatever.
Yeah.
But, she said, is there no redemption? Not talking about Harvey Weinstein, but everybody else who just may say something.
Then all of a sudden you're just done.
Right. And it's like, you're never, ever forgiven for it whatsoever. But I would take the cancel culture as not saying something that might be truly offensive or truly racist, but the fact of ideas that are perfectly normal. I mean, ideas on liberty and freedom, those things that are being canceled. I mean, everybody has their, if you say something, especially if you're working for somebody else, if you're working for somebody else, if you work for a radio station, TV station, and you say something that's blatantly racist, that's not the cancel culture is basically it isn't your company firing you. It's everybody else that has nothing to do with you wanting to permanently ban you.
Right. And get you out of, and in fact, make you unemployable altogether. That's what they want to do is their goal. And it's not for a real reason. If you do something or say something that's racist, that's one thing. But the cancel culture itself is much more than that.
But speaking of Friends, I only watched the Thanksgiving episode one time because they were playing football.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I remember from Friends is when Joey and the other guy got the two recliners, and they reclined back at the big screen TV.
That and the leftover sandwich.
Don't remember that one.
Yeah. Yeah, Ross's sandwich.
Yeah. Never saw
it. It still sounds like a good sandwich, by the way.
866-90 Red Eye.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. In order to manage speed, you need to understand the 4 factors involved in stopping a vehicle. Perception distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time you see a hazard until your brain recognizes it. The perception time for an alert driver is approximately 3/4 of a second. Reaction distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time your brain tells your foot to move from the accelerator until your foot hits the brake pedal. The average driver has a reaction time of 3/4 of a second. Brake lag distance also needs to be taken into account. When operating a vehicle with air brakes, it takes about half a second for the mechanical operation to take place. Finally, braking distance is the distance it takes a vehicle to stop once the brakes are applied. Braking distance is affected by the weight, length, and speed of the vehicle, as well as road condition. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Dick's Sporting Goods blames organized retail crime for 23% drop in profits. On Tuesday, they blamed organized retail crime for sinking their quarterly profits by nearly 25%, the latest retailer to reel from the growing epidemic of thefts around the country. They attributed the losses to organized retail crime and our ability to effectively manage inventory shrink. That's sort
losses,
of like
stealing.
Yeah, inventory shrink.
Theft
is now stealing.
Yeah. Gee, the inventory is shrinking. I wonder why. I don't know. Where's that guy going with that cart full of tennis shoes?
Oh, no, our inventory is shrinking.
It's shrinking. Walking out the door.
So good, you know you want to listen again with our podcast, available on our app and at RedEyeRadioshow.com.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, so Dick's Sporting Goods saying our Q2 profitability was short of our expectations, due in large part to the impact of elevated inventory shrink.
Yeah, okay.
Why do they do that?
Elevated inventory shrink.
I just think I just keep thinking of George Carlin talking about political correctness and changing words so it doesn't sound as bad as it really is.
No, that's it. And then it just sounds mundane, and you're not accusing anybody of anything. Yeah. Then what's happening? Inventory shrink. You mean you're not ordering enough? You mean there's a supply shortage? You mean, people are walking out the door with it. Now, by the way, that can also include, as pointed out by Walmart, employee theft. All right. Whoever the thief is, whether they're getting paid to steal from you or not, it's wrong. And you need to put a stop to it. I don't know how you do that. I don't know if we're going to get to the point, I think it was 50 Cent who said a couple of weeks ago, you're just going to have to be, in the future, it's going to be shopping by appointment only. You know, like they do the jewelry stores. You're not going to be able to go in and just shop. Or you order it and you pick it up. Or you go in and you swipe your card and grab a cart. How are you going to pay for it? Swipe your card. Sorry, we no longer accept cash. I don't know otherwise how you do it. We're going to swipe your card. Everything that goes out the door in this cart or in your hands is going to be charged to that card.
Well, but if you just walk in and you take it off the shelves and leave, whether you have that system set up or not, and nobody stops you because you're not going to be prosecuted, and the company is telling all employees not to do anything, and they don't want to upset other customers by having security that will grab you. It's interesting because I had an aunt that used to work in loss prevention.
Yeah.
They would grab people. This goes back, my aunt, this goes back to the 50s and 60s. You steal something, they're going to grab you and hold you till the cops come. Forcibly if they had to.
Yep.
And so we know how to stop it. You know, it's like the next story right here. Austin, Texas residents are feeling the aftershocks of the defund the police movement as staff shortages reportedly are leaving 911 callers on hold and crime continues to spiral out of control. The president of the Austin Police Association blamed the city council for neglecting local law enforcement, telling Fox and Friends on Monday that the alleged missteps have concocted a larger problem. We just continue to have a city council that doesn't show its police officers that it cares about them. Back in December of 2017, we had a city council vote down a police contract for the first time in the history of negotiating contracts. And as you know, we pushed forward in 2018, tried to get back under contract. The city decided to go through what they called re-imaging police oversight. And then, you know, we got back under contract. That was before the summer of 2020 that followed the death of George Floyd. He said, noting that 20 officers were then indicted for doing their jobs during chaos. You know, you look at it going on, the police chief has quit, as we know, in Austin.
Yep.
They have serious shortages. But, again, there was no other conclusion to defund the police.
Yeah, you were going to make, ultimately you were going to make, first of all, you got politically you got the response, and you actually had some, what were they trying to say? Oh, we're not defunding the police. We're just reallocating the money.
Reallocating resources.
Yeah. Depleting inventory. But they, money inventory. But then you also created on the streets the enemy in a uniform. Who would want to serve under any of that? You're not going to have the backing by local city council or the mayor who's calling for defunding the police, and they're taking money away from you, so you don't get the resources there, and then you're treated like the enemy on the street. Who wants to do a job like that? Oh, by the way, that's also highly dangerous. Who wants to do that job anymore? It has to be a calling. It most often is a calling. And if it's still a calling, I'm grateful for it for those young folks who want to go out and serve, by the way, in their communities. Many of them grow up in the community and then want to serve right there in that same town. I have a number of friends that have done just that. And they've made careers out of doing that. But there's a calling. It could also be generational. But when you create this, through lying, create a more dangerous situation for them and then start taking away their resources and their support, what do you expect to happen? We're a nation of laws, but without enforcement, the laws mean nothing. Whether it's the border or whether it's every town in America on the streets. Would you want to get out of a car when it's dark and walk up to another car that you can't see into, that you have pulled over on the side of the road, and look inside, all the lights coming down that road are blinding you, and you're trying to look to see what's going on, if that situation inside that car may be dangerous to you or maybe somebody else in that car? Not many people would. And we've created a nation based on lies.
Yeah, that's the one thing. That's the important
We've created a nation
lies.
that has created an enemy in law enforcement, and that is tragic. It's tragic.
Let me see, down more than 800 officers. The department saw a decline of $150 million budget cut roughly a third in 2020.
Wow.
What did you expect?
Yeah.
What did you expect?
I think it was 2021, maybe early 22. The Dallas police chief said the revolving door is just moving too fast. They get them trained, they get experience under their belt, and they're gone.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Because it's going to require those same chiefs to stand up the way that the union heads do. It's often the police officers' associations that are the ones being very blunt and to the point. You saw that in San Francisco. You see it in most of the major cities. And the chiefs just sit there and they either go along with what the mayor and other local leaders are doing, or they are quiet about it and they don't do something about it. If you're not willing to stand up for the men and women that are serving under you, don't do the job. Get out.
Yeah, we've seen that where the police chiefs don't even back their own force.
It's
and I understand in there, you had them talking about the contract negotiations. Not that police unions or any government union won't use that and haven't used that, but that's not what's going on.
That's
here.
not what's going on here at all. My dad was a police chief on a large Air Force base, and it is a different setting than non-Air Force base police officers. But it did you have to be diplomatic. He knew that. Ultimately, his boss was the wing commander. Well, I guess ultimately his boss was the president, but locally, the wing commander. There are things that you have to be diplomatic about. We understand that. That's what the job entails. Because you also have to be quite often a spokesperson, not just the public information officer, but you've got to do their job. You've got to manage those people. And I'm not saying it's an easy job. But when you throw them under the proverbial bus by going along with this mentality that the left has put into place, then you have absolutely no place in that role. You should be gone. You should go do something else. If you want to run for office, go run for office. I understand it is at times a political position that you have to be part bureaucrat. I get it. I saw my dad do it a number of times when I was a kid. And that was just a small sample as I learned of how that works. But you also have to understand the spirit of law enforcement and why it's necessary in a nation of laws, and that requires you to not only police your own, which I think they should do, but back your own and the spirit of that enforcement.
And it doesn't matter whether you're in a red state if you have a liberal city who decides that the city council decides, we want to destroy our downtown.
Yeah.
We want to destroy our city.
Yeah.
It still can happen.
Yep.
You can be in a red state, the state of Texas, when you've had Republicans embrace maybe not climate change, but the free subsidies of wind and solar.
Right.
And you see what happens here when there was only one conclusion of how that will be ironed out in the long run, and that will be everybody's going to have to reverse because the public is not going to stand for it. And you've seen it. What was the article in, was it Sweden the other day, how they've embraced now? Sweden was against nuclear power 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now they're embracing nuclear power.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, the rest of the world looks around at it and says, we're going to have to do something.
Yeah. And we know it's coming. The warnings have been there. All the grid providers have said, we can't do this. Electric vehicles, we know where it's going.
Yep.
The automakers have made it clear, we can't do this. We can't make a profit. Government can't be designating what the public, basically saying these are the products that the consumer has to buy. Then, even with subsidies, because the technology isn't ready yet for mass consumption, produce a product that the public can't even afford that is less efficient and productive than what they're driving now. and think that it's going to be a success when there's only one conclusion to that, and that's massive bankruptcy.
Yep.
And your taxpayer dollars being flushed down the toilet. There's only one conclusion. That should be a segment of the show now, a part of the show.
Yeah.
There's only one conclusion.
Yep.
To fund the police, there's only one conclusion.
It was always going to end this way.
Right. Homeless have rights to stay wherever they want.
Right.
There's only one conclusion.
Right.
Legalize all drugs.
That's right.
And defund the police at the same time. There's only one conclusion to that story.
Well, that's it. And they've decriminalized everything. Think about it. They really decriminalized everything. It's not just the drugs.
Oh, no.
Ask Dick's Sporting Goods when they're telling you, well, we have a shrinking inventory. Stuff's walking out the door, and Trump is going to have to pay a $200,000
I was
bail.
just going to say that. We were on the same thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day,
Yeah.
no cash bail, no cash bail, no cash bail, no. But you'll never find them again. They can go anywhere. They won't show up. They'll repeat the crime over and over again. So what? No cash bail, no cash bail, no cash. Trump, $200,000. He could disappear and you'd never find him again.
Yeah, as long as if you use the gun in the commission of a robbery, we won't charge you unless you pull the trigger.
Yeah, that was actually Alvin Bragg in New York.
He floated that idea.
That's how insane there is. And on that one, there's only one conclusion.
Yeah.
More armed robberies.
Right. Yeah. Donald Trump, he's a flight risk, right? Because nobody would know it's him.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the top of the hour, the debate tonight, and where might the candidates go? I do believe there will be attacks. Probably there possibility more attacks on DeSantis and Trump.
Could be,
and for a specific reason.
Yep.
We'll get to that coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.